Welcome to this podcast, episode 33. My name is Tim Mitchell, and I am in Toronto, Ontario, and I'm joined once again by Jonathan Kuline in Mississauga, Ontario.
Hello there.
Jaime is stuck in a transporter accident somewhere between Seattle and Portland. We're not sure.
Yeah.
Anyway,
somewhere in the neutral zone between Portland and Seattle.
Yes, exactly. That's what it is. Yes. So, and this is going to be a special treat for you this week. It's going to be a double episode of the latest Star Trek Discovery. We try to reschedule our recording so that we come out closer to the actual broadcast. So we're going to do the previous episode, which I think was Point of Light or something. He's opening up his IMDb. Yes, the Point of Light. And this week's episode was An Obol of Charon, whatever that means. Anyway.
Yeah, An Obol for Charon.
Is it? Oh, yeah. For Charon. Okay, yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. Anywho, let's start digging with some fact check to start off with. So I've got some on here. I guess, did you do any fact check, Jonathan?
You know what? I did do fact check this week because I felt bad about last episode, but you actually got more fact check than I did, and you got the ones I got. So you may as well. You're the fact check god now.
How about you? Okay, all right. Yeah. Well, 16 minutes in on episode 32, I discussed For All Mankind, which is a great Criterion Collection movie. It's filmed by the astronauts. It was actually, I think it was originally produced or released as a film in 1989. And I was talking about them thawing out the film and rescanning it and creating a better version. And that was for the Blu-ray version. On the show last week, I said DVD version, but I meant Blu-ray version. And so I believe it was Criterion Collection on the DVD release and on the Blu-ray version. The VHS version, I'm not really sure, and I don't know if I still have a copy of that, to be honest with you, on VHS, which for those of you who don't know is tape. And just as another side note on the film is the music was actually done by Brian Eno and Daniel Lanois when they first started getting together around the time that they were doing all that crazy U2 and stuff. And so the soundtrack is called Apollo, and it's an amazing disc if you're into that kind of music. So if you like the music in the film, definitely check out this Apollo CD. Even if you don't want to watch the film, I highly recommend the Brian Eno disc. It's one of my favorite discs. At 2226, the kid from Gotham, as Jonathan called him, is an actor named David Mazouz, and he's the one that plays Bruce Wayne in the Becoming Batman kind of show, which is what Gotham is all about. Actually, it's more about the detective and the Joker and
it's sort of a little bit the kid's story, but it really is sort of
it's got Arkham in there and all that
Jim
kind of
Gordon.
Stuff.
Yeah. They did say this week that as it builds towards its finale, which is coming up this year, that Batman will appear.
Oh, really?
So they will apparently have Batman as a character, but apparently David is not going to be the one in the costume. They're going to have a
body double,
stunt player or something in the costume. Interesting.
And at 38 minutes into the show, I said Oko is what they call Owosekun, but it's actually Owo is what they call her. And at one point, Pike says, hit the helm or whatever, turn on the shields or full speed ahead or whatever. She's the helmsman of the Discovery. And it's Lieutenant Owosekun. And again, I mispronounced it last week as well. At 1446, both of us mentioned May Ahern on the show when Jaime was asking about this imaginary friend that Tilly seems to find. But we did. I had put it in the fact check, but then when I listened to the show again, I realized that we actually did say the name correctly. And then finally at 105 in the episode, Aidan Gillen is the star of Project Blue Book, along with Michael Malarkey, Kizna Solo, and Laura Mellon. But Aidan Gillen plays Littlefinger in the Game of Thrones series, and I guess since he was spoilers dispatched from the show, he was able to take on Project Blue Book as a film vehicle. He's also been in a few other movies too.
Yeah, he was in The Wire, actually.
Was he originally in The Wire? Okay.
Yeah, he was. That's where I think a lot of people sort of first got to know Aidan Gillen. He played he played a counselor who went on to run for mayor and become the mayor in Baltimore. Very, very
really? Cool.
Memorable.
Is he British?
Memorable character. I think he's Irish. I'm not 100% sure, but we will fact check that one for next week. But
yeah, I mean, like even Idris Elba, who's the star of The Wire. I knew him from Luther. I didn't watch The Wire until I'd already seen a few seasons of Luther. He's an English actor, and most people don't even know because he plays. What's the name of the character he plays in The Wire? He plays the main bad guy.
Stringer Bell.
Stringer Bell. Yeah, people don't even know that he does such a good American accent that people don't even know he's British.
Yeah, I just looked up Gillen. Yeah, he's from Dublin.
Dublin. Okay, cool. Real time follow up.
Yep.
All right. So in our headline section, I posted in a link here. We were talking about Resident Evil last week, in Resident Evil Apocalypse. I don't know if it's the second or third film in the franchise. Was actually filmed. Well, a lot of these things are filmed in Toronto, but in particular, they used our downtown city hall, which is at Nathan Phillips Square. Pictures of Mila Jovovich running down the side of the building. It's funny. It's an iconically 60s style, very unique building. It's been used in, I think it was used in X-Men. Our city hall, the actual main hall, was used in X-Men for one of the movies. I think the first one. And then it's. I think it's also in the Handmaid's Tale in the first season of the TV show. You see that same building. Yeah, it's an iconic building.
It is.
As well, I also posted here that I saw, we were talking about Bruce Wayne and how Bruce Wayne is quite a different character than Batman in his portrayal. And I kind of sort of loosely said that Adam West, did not a very good, sort of portrayal. I mean, he was a great Batman. Obviously, he's the first Batman most of us knew. But there's an actual episode where they call Bruce Wayne on one phone and they call Batman on another phone. And of course, back in the old days, when we had wired phones, you had to hold the receiver up to your head and whatever. So he had two receivers, and he was talking to Chief Gordon Commissioner Gordon in one ear as Batman, and in the other one he was talking to the chief. I've forgotten his name now. Chief O'Hara?
Chief O'Hara, yeah.
He was talking to him in the other one as Bruce Wayne, and then at one point they decided, well, why don't you just talk to Bruce Wayne yourself, Batman, right? And so they hold the two receivers together, right? And it's a funny bit about that. So they hold the two together so Batman and Bruce Wayne can talk to each other on these two phones. And of course, Adam West is doing, and he's got the phone one ear and he's talking in the Batman voice and then talking in the Bruce Wayne voice, and you can see in that scene that he actually does have a different cadence and delivery and kind of this way of speaking when he's one character or the other, which I guess sort of plays up the ruse. But what was funny about it though is if you know how these old receivers worked, you had an earpiece and a microphone that you put the earpiece up to your ear and obviously speak into the microphone part. When they put the two phones together, they put the two earpieces and the two microphones together. So that would have been impossible for that to work.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I've got a clip here to that YouTube piece, so you can watch that. It's pretty funny.
Nice.
Yeah, and
as an underrated actor, actually, I think Adam West. I think I've heard some stories, especially as he passed away a couple of years ago. People were talking about how he really got pigeonholed a little bit by that role, but sure. That he was a pretty brilliant comedic actor. Again, that Batman role was meant to be campy and funny, and he was good in campy and funny. It now in retrospect it doesn't work as well, but he was good. He was really good.
Yeah, I don't know, but if you take it with the same intention, it's actually a very great TV show to watch, right?
It's one of, I think both of us are very fond of that show. Yeah. It's our first Batman. Again, people turned their back on it pretty hard when everybody got into the Dark Knight theory, but it's a great show for its own merits.
For sure. Now I put this one here, like the new. Oh yes, this is something about the cast of Dune. So they're remaking Dune. And it's funny because I read some tweets online that people are talking about Dune as if they don't even know there was a movie called Dune made. With Sting and Patrick.
I feel old now.
So, but Oscar Isaac has now been in negotiations to be in it. Rebecca Ferguson as well is in it. I don't even know who these people are.
Timothy Chalamet is going to be the star, right?
Oh, is he? Oh, he's going to play Paul Atreides. Who played Paul? Paul Atreides was the guy from what's that famous Twin Peaks, the star of Twin Peaks?
Yes.
What was his name?
Yeah. Killing me.
I'm killing you. Anyway, so because he was original, and Captain Stewart, Captain Stewart,
Patrick Stewart,
Patrick Stewart, Captain Picard was actually in this movie as well, the original one, right?
Yep.
But Dave Bautista's going to be in it.
Kyle MacLachlan, that's the fellow's name we're missing. Kyle MacLachlan.
Right, Kyle MacLachlan, yeah, and Stellan Skarsgård is going to be in it, as well as Dave Bautista from the Guardians of the Galaxy and Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah. And it's what's his name, Denis Villeneuve, right?
Right, exactly.
The director. Yeah. So a little Canadian connection there, and also again, I think we really liked the film that he made for Blade Runner 2049.
Right.
So cool to see what he can do with that world. I've heard an interview with him talking about it before he even got the job, and I know he's a huge Dune fan, but he specifically said, "I am a huge Dune Frank Herbert fan."
Oh, really? Okay.
So I think he wants to do a more faithful adaptation, which is actually kind of cool too.
My friend Mark is a big Herbert fan, and I read the book. I probably got 3/4 of the way through it, and I don't know. Like, he really was turned on by the book. Have you read the book?
I haven't. No, it's always been on my. I feel like as a sci-fi fan, I should pick that one up and read it, but I've never made the time for it.
I mean, I may be jaded by having watched the first Dune movie, which wasn't that, in my opinion, great, but.
Well, I mean, David Lynch definitely has a distinctive visual look as a filmmaker.
But was that David Lynch, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll have to go back and look at it again because, obviously...
I may or may not have a copy on Blu-ray here at the house.
May or may not. I think it's actually on the Netflix or the Hulu or something. Yeah. Something I can watch. I've seen it go by. Yeah, cool. I'll have to sit down and study that one to see how much better the new one is, I guess. Yep. All right, so you got... Oh, Traveler just canceled. I don't want to hear this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so bad news for Tim. News this week that Netflix's Travelers show has been canceled after 3 seasons. So bad news. People enjoyed that show. I know you were a fan, but alas, it is coming to an end.
I kind of wondered when Will and Grace sort of came out of the closet, as it were.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, clearly the paychecks would probably be a little better for working on an NBC sitcom than a more obscure show, shall we call it?
Politely? Yeah, well, Travelers. I actually watched Travelers. I think I watched Travelers on Space. I don't think
Yeah, I think it's actually. I don't know if it was a space show first or if it was a partnership or if Netflix picked it up for international distribution after that or whatever. But I was reading an American Story and it said Netflix's Travelers. So
right. Well, I know they've been showing it for the last couple of years, right? So maybe they owned it or something. But it's funny because I didn't watch the first episode because when I saw the previews for it, I kind of went, I don't know. But then I just started watching it and got hooked and went back and I even watched the first episode again. But it had an interesting idea. But it's typical of like the third season. It kind of started getting weird, so I could see why they would want to just sort of pull the plug on it. Yeah. It had an interesting concept. Maybe the story arc was always there to go where they were going to go. But I think I kind of often wonder if the writers really have everything fleshed out, at first.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these apocalyptic things, they end up having an odd twist or at some point in the future, right?
Yeah, I mean, some of these things are just, it's hard to keep the momentum up, right?
Right, yep. What else you got?
Speaking of shows that are demising, Legion, we got news this week that Legion will end its run after season 3. Now, I read the story. It's a story from the Hollywood Reporter. They said in here that it was always the intention of the series creator, Noah Hawley, to finish it at 3 seasons. It was always meant to be a 3-season series. I wasn't aware of that going in. I think we agree that season 1 was pretty breathtaking. Season 2 was pretty darned weird. Yeah. I mean, interesting, really, always visually, always interesting choices, but really like dense,
and
almost
you had to pay attention.
Times.
That was the other issue too. Yeah.
Oh yeah, you couldn't dual screen that show. It is. You have to watch all of it. There are huge, long stretches of the show where no one speaks, or it's just musical effects and stuff. It's very, very unconventional television, but really, really interesting sometimes. So sad to hear that one's coming to an end. Although I think it'll be interesting if this is the vision of the creator of the show to see if they're able to stick the landing. We also got news this week that they have cast a couple of actors to be in the final season. So we are going to get David's parents, and of course from the comic books, David's father is Professor Charles Xavier.
Actual real guy.
Well, the comic book character,
yeah, like the father, the X-Men,
like David Haller's father in the book is Professor X.
Oh, okay, cool.
So they've announced that they are going to bring in Harry Lloyd. Harry Lloyd, most people will know as Viserys, who is Viserys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, the jackass older brother of Daenerys, who meets an untimely demise in the first season by having molten gold poured over him. Yeah.
He got his crown.
So he got his crown, that's true. And meanwhile, the actress who's going to play his mother, Gabrielle, is Stephanie Corneliuson, who is she's on Mr. Robot, and she plays Joanna Wellick.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah. So we're going to get some interesting new developments on the final season, too. So
nice.
Something else to look forward to.
Yeah, we've had 2 seasons already, right? So we're getting a third one? Okay.
Third and final. We got news of a comic book that is definitely going to be a TV show now. So FX, the same network that shows us Legion, is going to be showing us Y the Last Man. So Y the Last Man, very popular comic book book through DC's Vertigo imprint. It's a story about the last man alive on Earth. A plague wipes out every male on the planet, but for one. And it's about this guy living in this world where he's the only man on Earth, and he therefore is this incredible commodity to be fought over and or sought after. And really, really interesting, really, really cool series that came out probably a good 15 years ago. It had been talked about for years that maybe this would be a good TV series or this would be a good film, and so now we know it's coming in 2020 to FX. So very cool.
All right.
We got news this week that we're getting the voice cast coming together for the cartoon series Invincible, which for those who are not comic fans is by the same creator as The Walking Dead. Robert Kirkman is the writer of this series, and so Amazon is going to be putting this animated series on, and apparently it's a 1 hour animated show, and they say it's going to be very faithful to the comic. Now, the comic has always been one of my favorites. I was a day oneer on Invincible and wrote about it quite a lot over my time covering comics and pop culture. So it's very cool to hear that this is coming. We knew that it was coming, but now they've started announcing the voice cast. Stephen Wen, who was Glenn on The Walking Dead, will be playing Mark Grayson, who's the titular hero, Invincible. His father is going to be played by J.K. Simmons. Sandra Oh from Killing Eve is going to be also on the show. Seth Rogen, Jillian Jacobs from Community, Zazie Beetz from Deadpool 2, Mark Hamill, Walt Goggins, Jason Mantzoukas. It's going to be a star-studded cast, and apparently it's going to be very faithful to the comic, and it's going to be an adult animated superhero show. So it's that
is book a TV show.
Yeah, it's an Amazon TV show, so it's going to be on Amazon Prime, and it's going to be 8-hour-long episodes for the first season. They say it's going to premiere in 2020, and they say it's going to be just as bloody and go to as many sort of weird and dark places as the book. Now, it's a superhero story, but there are some really weird twists, and Invincible gets into some pretty nasty fights that are, blood spattered and, with many a casualty. So it'll be interesting to see how far they push that, but it sounds like they're going way in on this show. So I'm really, really excited about this one.
Cool.
We also got news this week. Walking Dead gets renewed. It's going to get a season 10 at AMC. I suppose that's not a surprise, although having not watched any of season 9 so far, I guess I should be a little surprised. Maybe other people are still watching it. Of course, no Andrew Lincoln. Norman Reedus apparently is going to be the first on the call sheet, number one star of the show. So that's all you Daryl fans out there will be excited. We also got news this week.
So before you go too far on that,
sure.
Laura Cohen has now cemented her role as this detective, at least on CTV up here in Canada. So I think the fact that she's what's her character on Walking Dead? Maggie has left mysteriously. She just kind of wanders off at one point, and everybody kind of goes, "Where did Maggie go? I don't know where Maggie went." It's a big secret, and so I have a feeling Maggie's probably gone for a while, because she was having, I think we talked about her on the show last year, she was having contract troubles with the folks over there.
Yep.
So.
Yep. There was a story this week as well, though, that she dropped just a little hint at during an interview that there have been some discussions, as they are doing. Andrew Lincoln is apparently going to come back as Rick and play Rick in Walking Dead films, whether those are made for TV or theatrical, they haven't said. Yeah. There is talk that there may be a Maggie-centric spin-off, but she said that was very much just something that was discussed and not something that's in 100% going. But it was interesting that apparently she hasn't sort of said, no, screw you guys and I'm leaving. She's apparently open to that possibility. So interesting.
Right.
News this week from Disney. So they had an earnings call where they were talking about what they were going to do about their R-rated properties that they're taking over when they finish their purchase of Fox, which is expected this summer. And there was some discussion about whether or not they would start messing with some of the things that have been happening in the Marvel superhero world, where Fox is, of course, pushed harder into the edgier side with things like Logan and Deadpool, and the forthcoming New Mutants, which is apparently supposed to be a bit of a horror flick. They assured their shareholders this week that they are not intending to mess with Deadpool. They do not intend intend to tone it down. Now, a couple of things about that. One, good, because I don't think you should mess with something that's so successful. So I also wonder if that is a reflection of the fact that they did try doing a PG Deadpool release at Christmas time, just sort of gauge, I think, maybe see how things went. And I don't think it actually did very well. So it'll be interesting to see if they follow through on that. But they did say, yes, we fully intend to keep doing R-rated movies, but they probably won't have the Disney banner on the front, which makes you wonder, are they going to keep Fox as an imprint around so that they can distribute those types of movies?
See, okay. Yep. Oh, so they're buying Fox?
They are buying the 20th Century Fox film properties, and they are buying their television properties. They are not buying the television network. They cannot own that because they already own ABC.
Oh, I see. Okay, right.
But they are, so they will basically have the license for all those properties. So they are buying back all the X characters and the Fantastic Four. Yeah, but I thought I heard
you say it. So are they going to use the Fox marquee when they roll out these, non-Disney?
Well, they could. They basically said in so many words, we intend to continue doing R-rated movies like Deadpool, but they do not anticipate
Tinkerbell scrolling out the beginning is what I'm getting at, right?
Yeah, you're not going to see the magic castle and then see Deadpool swearing up a storm and chopping people's heads off.
Yeah.
They'll probably use another imprint, whether that's keeping Fox as an imprint so that they can do that because it's a brand, or whether they will create a brand new brand for that remains to be seen. But I guess it makes sense to me. If you've got a brand people know and trust, why not?
Sure.
Unless they kind of want to spike it because they can.
Sure. Okay.
And last for me, so news this week that in celebration of Black History Month, February, you can get a selection of 5 free Black Panther digital comics. So I've already done this. This is really cool. So if you go to Marvel's website, and we've got a link at our show notes, if you go follow this link in the Hollywood Reporter story to this site, it will take you to a spot where basically if you have a Marvel digital account, which is pretty easy to set up, you can download a selection of 5 different Black Panther comics, and you can read those on your phone, tablet device, or computer, and it's a nice little freebie for Black History Month. So pretty cool. I highly recommend. There's actually a couple of really good ones in there, so definitely worth picking up. And don't be surprised if you want to read the rest of them, because they're all number 1s, and they are number 2s that you're going to want to read after that.
Cool. I'm just setting one up here while we talk.
Yeah. Well, while you do that, I'm going to touch on a couple of things that Jaime put into our notes.
Okay, I was going to say, we often do that. We steal his stuff if he's not here.
We'll give credit where credit's due. Jaime threw these in there for us. So a couple of good things in here. So, of course, the Super Bowl was this week, and we got to see some cool stuff. So we had a great Game of Thrones Bud Light crossover commercial where it played kind of like it was going to be a bit of a farce. We had a knight come out like he was the cock of the walk, and he was wearing his Bud Light
it was shown right after they showed a big long Budweiser commercial about a play or two before this, right? So you were like, oh, in fact, Mark on our Patriots fan on the other podcast was like, oh God, not another Budweiser commercial, right? So they totally got him.
Yeah, and then of course this commercial halfway through sort of twists, and he's about to have a jousting match, and it turns out he's actually jousting the Mountain from Game of Thrones, who knocks him off his horse and off camera crushes his skull, a la previous episodes of Game of Thrones, and then the dragon shows up from Game of Thrones and torches the grandstand and everything, and it just and then it says Game of Thrones coming in April, which was again brilliant little crossover between those two properties, but yeah, very very fun little fantasy moment in the middle of a sporting event for us fans of that. Good. Another teaser trailer. We keep getting all these little 30-second teasers from Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4, we got a glimpse at a new look for Bo Peep. We didn't get to see her in Toy Story 3. She was sort of written out, so cool to see her back in. So neat. I wonder how they'll answer that. But again, really cool to see a favorite from the first 2 movies come back. We got our first look during the Super Bowl also at the Twilight Zone reboot. We got a look at Jordan Peele, and again, a nice sort of weird he walks onto the field at the Atlanta Stadium, and the crowd disappears, and then there's all these multiple Jordan Peeles in the crowd. It's really, really cool, very moody glimpse at this weird new Twilight Zone that he's got planned.
Right,
so I think it was, again, one of those ones that sort of piques your interest. Nice new trailer for Captain Marvel. And speaking of Captain Marvel, we got news this week that Captain Marvel is going to be the first Disney Plus exclusive film after its theatrical release, which means no Netflix. So this will be the first Disney Marvel film that will not be ending up on Netflix. So I guess that means we're going to get, what was the most recent one? I guess we got Ant-Man and the Wasp. I guess that was it, because we're not going to get Captain Marvel, and we're not going to get Avengers. So that's it as far as new first appearance on Netflix movies from Disney. So once again, Jaime is going to have to buy into another service if he wants to keep watching those shows.
So this is the Star Trek /Rent parody that you never knew you needed, and basically what it is a video, like a music video of the characters from the Discovery, Anthony Rapp and Saru and Sonequa Martin Green, doing a parody of the musical Rent on the set of Star Trek Discovery in uniform, and talking, like singing the sort of the tune, but they're talking about singing as if relevant to Discovery. So it's sort of, I guess it's I don't know if it was made as a commercial or a parody or a DVD extra or whatever, but it leaked out onto the web. And
well, they did those actors, so Doug Jones and Sonequa Martin Green and Anthony Rapp, and I feel like somebody
I think
else,
everybody else,
it was just the three of them. Did one of those carpool karaoke episodes for Apple TV.
Oh, did they? Oh, okay.
And yeah, so that came out last week, which was actually pretty funny. I did have a chance to watch that. So this might have been a teaser for that.
So this was with James Corden, that one,
James Corden, yeah.
Cool. Corden,
yeah. Yep. So again, I didn't see that one until you called attention to it, but I saw because they advertised it on Apple TV, and again, caught my eye with Star Trek, and I like James Corden, so that's
sure. Cool. All right, well, so this is the main part of the show. Let's dig into, we're going to do a double hit episode of the last two episodes of Star Trek Discovery, which are A Point of Light and I forget what the other one's called. Something for Charon or something like that. Anyway, so Jonathan, you've got the snippets here, so you lead in and I'll harp in when I feel necessary.
All right. So we start our episode with the half marathon being run through the decks of the Disco. Tilly is part of this command training program, is running this half marathon. She's pushing herself, but of course she's having these weird she's realized hallucinations where she's seeing this mysterious character, May, who she of course now realizes after the end of the last episode is actually somebody who's dead.
So I don't know if you noticed or not, but they have new Discovery t-shirts. Last year there were the white word Disco, and now it had like a gold insignia and the letters in gold. So
yeah, it's very
good
cool.
For the merch, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to keep it mixed. You got to keep mixing it up. It's like hockey jerseys. You got a new design every year.
Yeah.
Amanda arrives. So Spock's biological mother and Michael Burnham's adopted mother, Amanda, shows up on the Discovery, and
on Sarek's ship too.
On Sarek's ship, yeah. And so we get this sort of grand unveiling. We expect it's going to be Sarek that shows up, and it turns out to be Amanda. And of course, she goes to Michael and says, you got to help me figure out what's going on with Spock. Meanwhile, we get our first look this season back on what's happening on Kronos, on the Klingon homeworld, where we see L'Rell and Ash/Voke. What are we going to call in this episode?
It's the episode of the Klingon newlyweds, right?
Yes. That's we're getting our first look at the marital bliss of L'Rell and Ash/Voke. So turns out that it's not all happy back on that planet, where the houses, in spite of the fact that they sort of fell under L'Rell as the new leader of the Klingons at the end of season 1, it's not quite a houses united. And we also get the weird revelation that their hair is back. That they make a comment that they had been shaving their heads to look like in the tradition of Kahless. I don't remember reading that anywhere, but apparently Kahless made them shave their heads when they went into battle. So so they brought back the hair. We talked about that a couple episodes back, that they were going to do that. So they look a little bit like what we establish as Klingons in previous mysterious canon, but also a little gray.
I do have to point out, though, that a couple of things. One is that their heads change, the ridges on their heads, and at one point in the episode, when she's going through some stresses, her head actually undulates and changes. But I don't know if they did that in the episode to make it to sell the fact that she has a different head than she had in the first series, right, or first season. I don't know if you noticed that or not. But the other question I had was, so did we not see her in the brig in the first episode of this season talking to Sarah?
I think that was just a
flashback.
Flashback.
Oh, okay.
I think it was a flashback to when she was there.
All right.
So I'll continue on that storyline. So we'll do that, and we'll circle back to what's happening on Discovery. So on this Klingon homeworld, eventually we learn that there's sort of these it's very, very Shakespearean. There's these people are plotting against L'Rell.
Well, it's typical Klingon, right?
Yeah, and they're very uncomfortable with the fact that while Ash is part Klingon, part human, as this sort of hybrid Ash Vok person, and speaks Klingon and acts Klingon, they are people who are very much resentful of his presence. So he's suspicious of what's going on with. He thinks that L'Rell's not. She's keeping secrets from him. He eventually finds out that she has been hiding the fact that she and Vok had a baby, who is also albino, like Vok was. He says, I don't care. I love you. I can't believe you hid this baby from me. We got to be that. We got to be parents to this baby. We'll sort of ride out whatever happens. So they go to retrieve this baby who's been living sort of under the guardianship of her uncle. But they go to pick up the baby, and turns out that this Klingon counselor, Kolsha, who's been working against them, has kidnapped the baby and demands that L'Rell turns over power in the Empire to him. Ash and L'Rell show up. Of course, it's a trap.
It's a trap.
They get into this big fight. There's some sort of funky looking batleth kind of weapons. Some butt kicking goes on, but Kolsha gets the drop on them and paralyzes them, and then gets her sort of fingerprint on a signature of resignation. But then this mysterious figure opens in, and sure enough, it's the Emperor. It's Emperor Dark Georgiou to the rescue. She comes in, saves the two of them. They kill all the bad guys. But basically, she puts it to L'Rell. Listen, you can't. We're here to make sure that your regime stays in power and that you guys stay out of trouble and that you guys don't start another war with the Federation. So we're gonna have to do something about this. So they force L'Rell to give up Ash and the baby. So the two of them get amscrayed by Georgiou. They put them on a ship. They take them out of there.
But the play is, you don't find that until the very end. But it's like she pretends she's killed them off, L'Rell, right?
Yeah, that's right. So L'Rell goes to the council, holds up the severed heads of Ash and the baby, and says that Kolsha, who actually tried screwing them over, died protecting her. She says, "You can call me mother," and basically sort of renews her investment in taking care of the Klingon people. Meanwhile, we do find out that the Emperor has taken Ash and the baby aboard their ship, which is a cloaked Federation ship, by the way. And of course, as we sort of knew from the end of last season, she is part of Section 31. We find out that Ash is going to send the baby to live with these monks who basically live in seclusion. The baby will never see him again or see L'Rell again, but he knows that that's for the best. And we get the sort of conclusion that the Emperor has been doing this in part to stabilize the Klingon Empire, but in part because she wants to recruit Ash into Section 31. And it looks like at the end of the episode, that's what happens. So pretty cool Klingon bringing them back into our world after they were such a big part of the first season. It's nice to get back in with them after 3 episodes. So very cool. Back on Discovery. So yes, Amanda had arrived. Turns out she had stolen Spock's medical file, but she can't open it. She asks for help. Burnham takes it to Pike. Pike ends up helping her out. They open it up and they realize that Spock is actually wanted for double murder because he apparently went crazy when he was at the psychiatric ward. So then we get information that Spock, from Amanda, that Spock had actually seen the Red Angel. That is the big mystery of this season when he was a child. So Michael had run away at one point. He Tilly apparently had this vision of the angel, and the angel told him where Michael had gone, and so apparently that had made this very severe impression on him. So now we get a clue that this thing has occurred to Spock before. So we didn't really know where he had seen this before, and he'd been drawing it. Now we know exactly where that came from. Michael confesses that she had deliberately spurned Spock to try and sort of what was her motivation there? I can't remember what she said. She said she sort of spurned him because she didn't want him to she didn't want to be responsible for his emotions or something.
Right. Yeah, something like that.
So Amanda's clearly mad about this, finding out that she was mean to Spock.
Quit picking on your brother.
Yeah, pretty much. And so that was sort of the end of where we left that part of the story, right? Yep. Meanwhile, Tilly, still seeing May, starting to lose her marbles a little bit. She goes up to the bridge as part of this command training program. She starts yelling at May because May is yelling at her, but no, of course, no one can see her, and everyone thinks that she's yelling at Pike, so she gets booted off the bridge. Eventually, she sort of has this breakdown where she confesses to Michael Burnham, this thing is,
messing with my head,
something.
Man.
Yeah, something is, and so they eventually deduce that something must have happened. They figure out exactly as Spockcast predicted that the spore that fell on her shoulder at the end of the last season had in fact been this thing that had sort of penetrated her, and it turned out it was this sort of aliens. So Stamets goes and gets this device and basically exorcises this alien out of Tilly and captures it, and we end up with this sort of weird gray fungus-looking thing that blob. Yeah, it looks like the blob from Ghostbusters. That they end up sort of locking up, and so now we know that May was not just a hallucination; that it was in fact a living thing that was penetrating her. But we don't really at this point know why. So,
right.
Yeah. So overall impressions of this episode, anything stand out for you?
Well, the Klingon piece I could have lived without. That was kind of hokey, and so I can't remember if this was another episode that had to wrap itself up in 40 minutes or so, like this week's show actually had to do as well, right? But it was a bit of a departure from the one before. I guess it was a continuation of the story about the spore and about May.
Well, we got a little bit more of the taste of some of the mystery, what happened with Spock, and we got a little more of their childhood in the background and where he had seen the Red Angel. So it threads things along. So there are these sort of three storylines, and it did get a little convoluted because we were jumping back and forth, as you could tell from my explanation. But overall, I think there was enough to sort of keep it moving forward. I don't think it was as strong as the episode before it, but I think it was also, it was sort of the plot exposition episode that kind of had to keep things rolling.
Right. And it's funny because I'm now getting to the point where every time the transporter goes off, I expect to see Spock, and I'm disappointed. Yeah,
it is funny because that was like all the talk going into the season was, they're bringing Spock, they're bringing the Enterprise, they're bringing Spock, they're bringing the Enterprise. We saw the Enterprise for a grand total of 30 seconds in the first episode, and then they towed it away and it was gone. Although they did leave Pike behind, and that's through 3 episodes we've recapped now. Still no Spock, and as we move into our recap for the episode from this evening. Episode 4, no spoilers, still no Spock.
Yes, right. Yeah, that one starts off, we can start off with that one. They starts off with number 1 appearing in the transporter beam when I expected Spock. And she comes to report on her investigations of what she's been trying to uncover about the disappearance of Spock. And I think she may have, did she successful on encrypting this file that Amanda had brought or something like that? But she'd found some stuff. And it turned out it was Rebecca Romaine from X-Men and from The Librarians, which I don't know if you watched the Librarians show, Jonathan, but she's one of the characters in that with the guy from Night Court.
John
Larroquette, yeah. So it's quite, I think it's a British show, and it's similar to Doctor Who in its sort of pacing and special effects and stuff like that, but it's actually pretty entertaining. It's kind of hokey, but she plays an American CIA agent in that one, but it's surprising with the black hair didn't look anything like her. But what the first thing I did when I saw her, because I didn't recognize her right away, and we might have talked about her signing on, and of course she was the first in command with Christopher Pike in the original Cage episode, right? So I didn't recognize her, but so I pulled up my IMDb app and I wanted to see if she was in fact the voice of the computer, because that would have been a cool twist.
Yeah, that would be. Because
Majel Barrett was, of course, the computer voice in the original Star Trek, and I think she was computer voice in most of Star Treks, right? And she also played number one in that first pilot, right? So and then she was also what was her name? Deanna's mother, Loxana Troy.
Loxana Troy.
And she was actually she was Nurse Chapel in the first series, and I think she played a couple of aliens too, if I'm not mistaken. I think she was one in every episode up until she died, right? Every
iteration of Star Trek.
Did she have a character in Deep Space Nine? I guess maybe she played Deanna's mother again in that one.
Yeah, I think she may have played Loxana again.
Right, yeah.
That was a very memorable character.
Yeah. But she was a staple to Star Trek, which kind of to sort of the running, I have a bad feeling about this kind of character, right?
Mrs. Gene Roddenberry didn't hurt also.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
for sure. Anyway, do you want to recap this one?
Sure. So from picking it up from there, so we got news that so Spock is obviously she has the information that
he's on the lam.
He's on the lam, that he's stolen a shuttle from the psych ward, and so they start tracking this shuttle. So the basic pickup point is that, hey, let's get him and figure out what's going on. So they start tracking the shuttle. When they run into this
orb
trap, this big alien blob, this giant planet-sized blob in space that sort of sticks them like glue. And we get a very funny moment as it's clearly disrupting the ship's systems. It wrecks the universal translator. It hits it with a computer virus, and so everybody on the bridge is all speaking different languages, and it's spitting out. So what people are saying is being translated into random languages. So they're speaking German, and they're speaking Klingon, and they're speaking all these different languages. Italian at one point I heard, Spanish I heard at one point. So
and Chinese and Japanese too.
Chinese I definitely heard. So
with subtitles.
Burnham has the idea. You know what? We need Saru. She calls Saru to the bridge because Saru actually took the time as part of his training to learn 94 distinctive languages. Right. So Saru walks around from panel to panel and person to person, speaking whatever language that is coming up on their keypads or whatever they're saying, because he can speak back to them in all their languages. Again, a nice little moment of levity.
But he's also wandering around like he's got this Kelpium head cold, which is got him feverish and sweaty and so on and so forth, right? So
yeah, he mentions at the beginning of the episode that he's not feeling well, and then by the time we see him here, he's starting to look quite unwell. So then we sort of learn as he's going through, and he's helping Burnham go from place to place, trying to figure out how to fix the systems and fix all this cascading virus that's going through Discovery. He starts getting worse and worse and worse, and eventually they take him to sickbay, where he reveals that he's actually dying because the sensation he's going through is something that all of his people go through, and apparently it's tied back to that Short Trek episode where we saw the people who come and they basically take away some of his people. They are being taken away, and apparently he says either they are taken away and they die, or they die of fear, basically, because we established through it the whole first season and then into this one that his people are acutely motivated by their fear of death.
Right. Yeah.
That their fight or flight is very much not there. That theirs is basically like live or die.
And the sacrifice to these people is a sort of rite of passage that they get to a point in their at a certain age that they have to go, and that's been triggered by this. Have you talked about the fact that it was triggered by this big giant orb thing?
Yeah. Well, that's how they eventually put it together. Is that he's sort of starting to feel worse and worse, and he realizes, like, I know all the signs, I've seen this happen before, this is 100% fatal, my people get like this, we die, that's how it goes. Then of course he realizes that the alien might actually be trying to speak to them, that maybe the reason he's feeling the way he's feeling is because it is broadcasting
no there's a point there where where we kind of have to go back to the scene with Tilly and Tignataro and Stamets, where
yes, okay, that's true.
Michael Burnham runs up to the window and they're talking about, they're trying to communicate with this blob which has now attached itself to Tilly's arm. I'm spoiling part of your rundown here, and they're saying we have to figure out how to talk to this thing. We have to figure out how to speak to it. We don't understand what it's saying, and that's when Michael Burnham realizes that's what this orb is trying to do. It's trying to communicate with us, and she runs back to Saru and says, "We need to figure out how to talk to it." Then he says,
"Meanwhile, it came here to die." Yes, no, it's a good point. I was trying to sort of not weave in the second narrative here, which we'll get back to in a second. So anyway, we end up with them realizing that this thing is trying to communicate with them. So Saru's advice is, hey, let's lower the shields. Let's actually let this thing try and do what it's trying to do, which is clearly trying to share information with us. It's trying to speak to us.
With infrared pulses, which only he can see, right?
Exactly, yeah. So he ends up basically he and Burnham go up and convince Pike that this is the best plan, that they should do this. So they do that. He says, okay, I trust you guys. They lower the shields. They let in all this info, and it basically looks like it's going to overload the ship, and it looks like it's going to blow, and it does, and it goes kaboom, and they fully expect that they're going to get vaporized, but in its last act, it basically shields, it basically pushes away the Discovery and directs its blasts in a different direction and saves the ship, while in its last act giving it all this information. So
telling its story, exactly,
yeah, very, very interesting way of doing that.
It's kind of a tie into that episode of The Next Generation where Picard gets sucked into that alien probe, and he lives an entire life and learns to play this magical flute and all that kind of stuff, and he has a whole life as a person, and like it takes place like in 10 minutes or something like that in real time.
Yep.
But he relives the civilization that's now extinct, right?
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, the dying of this thing does not fix Saru, so he is still pretty sure that he's dying. So he goes down to his quarters. This is the first time I realized we got to look at Saru's quarters, which is very funky. It's got like moss and earth. It looks like I don't know. I don't even.
It's kind of all. It looks like mold has grown all over the place, and plants and everything, and very organic.
Yeah, and he's got plants from his planets and stuff like that. And he basically says to Tilly that it's very emotional, or to Burnham, they have this very emotional scene where the two of them are talking and they realize what they mean to one another, and it's this very sort of poignant thing, and you start to think to yourself, they're not really going to kill off Saru, are they? Yeah, and it just sort of seemed like very out of the blue. And so Saru basically says, listen, I'm dying and I need your help. I need you to take this knife out of the drawer, cut off my ganglia, which are these little protrusions from the back of his neck that are part of his sensing of
empathy,
fear and danger. And he basically says, like, I need you to take these things off because that will end my suffering, and then I'll just die, and you're my friend, I need you to do this. So they have this very emotional farewell, and just as Burnham is about to touch his knife to his ganglia fall off. And it's this weird, like, now what? So they end up back in sickbay where they find out that Saru is now fine. But not only is he not dead, but apparently he no longer feels that fear that motivates and drives their people, that he actually feels what he says is, quote, power. So cool development. I wonder what this does for this character going forward.
I think what I got out of it was this whole thing about these people having to sacrifice themselves at this point in their lives was a ruse to keep them down.
Oh, I'm sure.
Because now he feels like it's kind of like he's reached adulthood, and he's never known anybody who's experienced this, and because all it is his ganglia fall off, and then he's like now just a regular Kelpian, but he's not, like it's kind of like Logan's Run, where you reach 25 and you have to die, and nobody knows what happens if you live past 25,
Yeah, but it is definitely a reset for the character though, because everything that we've known about him for the last season plus 4 episodes now can be sort of rewritten. We knew him as this very sort of smart but very also
also, occasionally, timid or meek sometimes, or sort of non-confrontational. Again, they address that he's very empathetic, but also at times
driven by fear, for sure.
Very trepidatious, very afraid of death, very afraid of danger, and cautious. So it'll be interesting to see what this does for the dynamic of that character going forward, as he now basically says, like, I don't feel like I did before. I feel like a new person. So
yeah, he could go into they could go into all kinds of different directions. It could be like he could get psychosis and like become a pirate, and be like a real evil guy, or he may just become brave and have lots of bravado and be able to make decisions that he normally wouldn't have made before. So they could take that arc in any number of directions, right?
Yeah, but cool, interesting. I'm curious to see what they do with this next time. I must admit, now I ended that thinking like I want to know what they're going to do with this now.
Yeah.
Our other plot line that we follow through this episode is that, which we touched on a little bit before, was that we have the blob that we discussed before, the former May Ahern blob, is now in this container inside of engineering. So Stamets and Tilly and Jet Reno, who was the engineer that they picked up in the first episode from the Hiawatha, are in engineering when this computer virus goes through the ship and starts damaging things. They end up getting basically trapped in the engineering department. And as part of that, the door to the containment room that holds the Mayshroom spore monster ends up opening up, and it latches onto Tilly's arm. They end up basically sticking her back in with the thing into the containment unit, but it basically is not letting go of her arm, and it starts basically doping her up. So they realize it's actually releasing, was it cybacillin?
Yeah.
It's releasing into Tilly's bloodstream, so she starts having this like mushroom trip where she's sort of, starting to feel kind of trippy and starting to talk funny, and she has a couple of really funny lines. Again, Mary Wiseman's a delight. They end up concocting this plan to basically try and talk to May. So they actually need to implant this connector to this device in her head. So they literally come up with a plan to drill a small hole in the side of Tilly's head so they can implant this thing in her skull. So they start singing David Bowie's Space Oddity to, distract her for a second, and Stamets literally drills a hole in the side of her head with no painkillers or anything else, which is, again, a very funny, weird scene.
Well, there's a bit of setup here that we kind of miss, and it's part of the orb attacking the ship sets all the computer systems into defense mode, and so the engineering section to protect the warp drive and the spore drive shuts down and locks all the doors, and all that we're left with is Stamets, Tilly, and Nick Tignataro's character, and
Reno.
Sorry,
Jet Reno.
Yeah, and at the beginning of that section, there's a dialogue between Stamets and Jet. What's her name again?
Jet Reno.
That they're like trading insults from the point of view. He's like very empathetic, and she's being very engineering, and I can fix that with gaffer tape, and she asks Tilly for some gum, and she fixes part of the engineering piece by chewing the piece of gum and sticking it into the hardware and pushing it back into position. So there's a whole sort of thing. The reason why they only have a power drill is the reason why they do that instead of going to get a laser or whatever, right? So because she's stuck in this room, right?
Yep. So then they actually manage to implant this thing, and they end up communicating more directly. And so we hear the voice that we heard in the last couple of episodes that was May's voice speaking through Tilly, and she says, we were here to make, to communicate with you guys, to talk to you about these horrible hostile invasions that have been happening in our territory. And Stamets is like, oh, well, we can help you with that. And they're like, duh, you guys are the ones doing this. It's the spore drive that's doing this. You are the ones invading our territory. Right.
They decided to kind of shut it down or something like that, right? Or close the door.
Yeah, so then he basically says, listen, I'm sorry, we'll try and do that. They basically try and figure out at that point how to get this thing off of Tilly. It tries to escape, basically. It starts to like basically break out because it's like, I don't need to be here anymore. I'm like stronger than you guys. It breaks free of the restraints that they have on it. Reno grabs a blowtorch basically and like swipes it up against this blob monster, and it freaks out and it basically engulfs Tilly, so it covers her entire body, and falls to the floor. They see Tilly trying to basically like escape from it, so they pull Tilly out of it, and then they're all basically standing around saying like, wow, that was really scary, good thing we got out of that. And then all of a sudden you see this sort of weird glowy effect happening through the engineering department, and they're sort of start talking funny, and then you realize that the picture's going a little weird and people's heads are distorted, and it's clear that Stamets and Reno are starting to get going on a trip, and they realize, oh no, something's going wrong. We're having the same effects that the cybacillin. They're on their bad mushroom trip, so they inoculate themselves against it. But by the time they do, they realize that it's gotten Tilly, and so they turn and they look, and the episode ends with them basically looking through the hole that Tilly had crawled out from originally and realizing that Tilly is gone.
Mm-hmm. And
dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, and in the teaser for the next episode, we see that Tilly's stuck inside this, cyclo whatever world. It's funny, there's an episode of Twilight Zone where a kid gets stuck in a wall, the same sort of idea. So no new ideas anymore.
Narnia? Is he in Narnia?
Yeah, I don't know. No, it's the kid's stuck in the wall, and the father has to walk through the wall and find the kid. They can hear the kid, but they can't see the kid. Yeah, and they keep talking to this part of the wall, and then the father decides he can actually put his arm in, and he walks in and goes in and rescues the kid and brings her back. Very creepy.
Yeah, well, that's
when you're like 8 or 9 years old.
Yeah. So so what'd you think of this one?
This was a much better episode than the previous one, as you said. And again, it sort of wrapped itself up within this sort of 40-minute timeline that had to finish. Mm-hmm. A little bit disappointed that they almost lose Spock. Like their whole thing is, we got to get out of this situation so we can go catch Spock, and all the while Spock's like getting further and further away from them and out of sensor range and that kind of stuff. And interesting thing that there's a whole lot of like it's kind of like the Star Trek reboot from J.J. Abrams' version, because there's all these things like, okay, so this big giant orb gives them 100,000 years worth of knowledge and science and whatever, because it wants to tell its story, which is what they discover it's trying to do. So it dumps its information down to the core, and they're able to improve their sensors and find out where Spock is actually going, because they at the end of the episode it teaches them how to extend their sensor range. But so all this technology that's happening in this whole version of Star Trek, we got the spore drive, we have the mycelium network, we have this this orb that gives them 100,000 years worth of knowledge. Where is all of that in William Shatner's Star Trek?
Yeah,
right. That's my problem. This is like the prequels to Star Wars to A New Hope, right? Because there's so many new developments that how could Obi-Wan possibly not know that he once had a relationship with R2-D2, in A New Hope?
Yeah.
These are the...
Well, again, this is a problem when we talked about this before. The reason I think I'm most excited for that Picard series is that it's moving forward. And forward, you can do anything. You can be like, hey, we invented that. The problem is when you go backwards, it's difficult to line things up with canon. You just have to sort of accept it. Now, it sounds like, obviously, when they're talking about the spore drive, it sounds like things are not going well there. It sounds like they're having some problems with this alien species that they've interfered with. I think it's going to be easy for them over the course of Discovery to basically unwrite the fact that spore drives can't work and they don't work. And
but that said, if James Kirk ever knew any inkling that technology ever existed, he would have brought it out and tried to beat Trelane with it or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Again, you never know how these things play out. Again, maybe at some point Section 31 gets involved and they eliminate the use of the spore drive and wipe its records.
Or Spock goes and puts his hand on everybody's head and says, "Forget,"
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. I think this was a good episode. It was lots of good moments. It was
exciting. It was colorful. Yeah, lots of funny bits.
Yeah, Tig Notaro's banter back and forth with Stamets was really good.
The malfunction of the universal translator.
That was really funny. So they got sort of up and down. Again, very emotional. The scenes between Sonequa Martin Green and Jug Jones as Michael Burnham and Saru, and that sort of as he feels like he's dying, and they're saying goodbye, and they talk about the meaning. it was really sweet. Like, it was really well acted, and like, it wasn't hokey. It wasn't like, you know, I mean, again, you really weren't sure sort of which way it was going. You know, you never know with these episodes what they're going to do. You'd think they're probably not going to kill off Saru, but, you know, for a second there, I thought, oh, maybe this is a twist. They just were trying to catch us off guard. You never know.
Yeah, it's funny how they have these sort of parallel storylines too, because they did it again today, where you know, they're trying to communicate with the Blob, and that gives Michael Burnham the answer to what the big challenge is how to communicate with this thing. This orb is dying, and so Saru's manifesting his empathy by dying, right? And you know, like for the orb it ends, but so the writers, like last week, it was like they used the magnet to unlock the cellar door and free themselves, and then they used the magnetism to, you know, rescue the entire world by pulling away the debris. Was that last week or the week before?
There was it was two episodes before us, I guess.
And even in the beginning, when the guy with the guy that had the cold in the elevator scene, you know, he's
Linus the Saurian?
Yeah, Linus. Yeah, I guess he's talking about having a head cold or whatever, and but he was having trouble with the Universal Translator at the beginning of the episode, right? So this is sort of the kind of like. Do they think we're that dumb that we need to have it sort of
little foreshadowing, a little
foreshadowing, and little parallel storylines? This seems to be the trope for this team of writers, right? I wonder if we're going to see this continue throughout the whole series, right?
Yeah, well, it makes you wonder if, like, you should go back and watch these first 4 episodes again to look for patterns that might repeat themselves as we go.
Or even things that are, maybe that's what the whole the 4 shorts were about, that they kind of lead into this, because we didn't know, like, we needed to know about Saru's sister for this episode, right? It's like, you know, we needed to have the shorts to sort of show what Saru's life was, and about this whole ruse about, you know, how they all end up sacrificing themselves to this higher power, this slave master relationship that they have going on. What do they used to call it in when you had somebody who owned a big plot of land and they have the poor work on it? Is it serfs?
Serfdom
or something like that. You know, sort of. It's kind of like this other society that has more technology and eats these guys, I guess, right?
Something like
teaches
that.
Them that there's a day of slaughter or a day of reckoning or whatever, and that's where they have to go and sacrifice themselves for the greater good. And then it turns out that Saru finds out your ganglia fall off, and you're no longer meek and timid and mild and whatever, right? So I was actually wondering if what's the name of the actor that plays Saru?
Doug Jones?
I was actually wondering if Doug Jones had a movie contract coming up or something. Like,
it's exactly where my mind was. Like, well, he was in Shape of Water, and that was a big hit. Maybe he's going to do something else.
Shape of Water 2.
What's Guillermo del Toro working on next? You know,
is he maybe doing Hellboy 2 or whatever?
Is he the new Hellboy? I don't know. It's good stuff. So you want to do a quick recap of last week's Orville episode?
I really don't want to do a recap of last week's Orville because it was yuck.
Can we sum it up in a few words?
Well, so here's my problem with the Orville. Okay, and I've had discussions with people online about, like, some of my friends, like, you know, they're loving the Orville and hating Star Trek. I'm like, are we watching the same shows?
Yeah.
You know, because I'm sorry, the Orville is horrible.
It really has not gone anywhere good this season. I honestly can't think of an episode where
I'm sorry, Data and Tasha Yar getting it on, that was believable, you know? But this, and I'm sorry, this robot, or whatever, I forget his name. Isaac. Other than the fact he's named after Isaac Asimov, I don't know, like it just, his whole head and the way his body, I mean, the one cool thing I will give you is when he goes into the holodeck and becomes the person, it's actually the actor who plays Isaac. That was probably the best part of the show, was the fact that you actually got to see this guy as himself. But it was weird because I'm looking at him going, well, that's Isaac's voice, but is that really, you know, this actor's? And it turned out it was, because I checked it out, right? But yeah, I don't know, this whole plot line with the Doctor and Isaac, you know, we saw it coming. We knew it was coming.
Oh yeah, no, we knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I can't believe they telegraphed it so bad. They've done this a few times this season where they telegraph things and you're like, they won't just do that because that's so easy, and you're like, oh nope, nope, they did that. Yeah, I mean, basically the whole episode is about the Doctor and Isaac basically finally hooking up, and my show notes, I was literally writing it and like writing in my editorials as I was going. I'm like, oh my God, are they really going to do this? Like, I can't believe they're doing this. Please, God, make this stop. Like, it was just, it was so predictable. It was so contrived. It was so formulaic. And it's disappointing because the episode was written and directed by Seth MacFarlane, who, again, I am a fan of. I have enjoyed a lot of his work, but I do not think this was his best. The subplot with Bortus growing a mustache was the best part of the episode.
Norm Macdonald appearing as Yaphet in the holodeck.
Yes, well, that's true. Yeah, that's yes. Trying to pick up the Doctor on the rebound. Yeah, no, it was awful. It was genuinely. I was just like, how much more of this is there? How much more of this is there? How much? It was not an enjoyable experience. And they're off this week. They're doing a rerun this week, so small mercy we get a week off from it. But I'm disappointed. I mean, again, we're now 6 episodes into season 2, and it is not growing on me. It is definitely something I would like to scrape off.
Yeah, no, I got to go back to watching Supergirl for sure.
Oh yeah, Supergirl's great.
All right, well, why don't we move on to the watch list since it was such a horrible show. We can't recommend you watch The Orville this week.
No, definitely avoid the last episode of The Orville.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll go first. So this weekend, the Lego Movie 2 opens, and I was a big fan of the first Lego movie. I enjoyed the Lego Batman movie that they did, and so now Lego Movie 2, the second part, is coming this weekend. Definitely going to try and see that. Both my sons are very excited to see that one, so that is very high on our list. Not sure how they'll be able to match the first one. It was obviously it was very, very well done film.
Is there everybody back, Christopher Pratt?
Yep. So right across the board.
So did you see Will Arnett on Jimmy Kimmel? I think it was last night, actually.
I didn't see him. I saw him on James Corden last week.
Okay.
It was Will Arnett and who are the other two stars
from the show?
From the Lego movie.
Chris Pratt and
yes.
Sam Jackson's in it.
No, it was the woman whose name is escaping me right now. I'm going to type it in.
While you think about it, so he was on Jimmy Kimmel the other day, and he had just bought himself a tuxedo. So he's on the show in a tux, and he's going on about how he bought the tux because he's expecting to get all this gold hardware at the Oscars. When the Lego Movie 2 wins Oscar, and he'll get Best Supporting Actor, and Jimmy Kimmel says, "You think you get Best Supporting Actor?" Because, "Oh yeah, you're right. I should try aim higher. I should get Best Actor, right?"
Yeah.
So he goes on, and then of course he's Jimmy Kimmel kind of explains that Batman, or not Batman, but the Lego Movie 2 didn't get any nominations for the Oscars. So
yeah, well, it wasn't released in time. Isn't there still time for next year? So it was Chris Pratt, Elizabeth Banks is the actress.
Oh right, yes,
I was trying to think of, and Will Arnett. So the three of them went to Space Camp on James Corden last week. You can watch this on YouTube. It's great. So the three of them went and basically had a competition to see, in the opinion of an actual astronaut. So this is a guy who was like a legit astronaut. Walked them through their paces and basically did like the gyroscope with them. They did the what's the one that's the accelerometer, the thing that spins around and makes them feel multiple G's of gravity and stuff like that. They did all these different tests. They did trivia tests and stuff like that. And they were trying to determine which of them would make the best actual astronaut.
Of the four of them, including James Corden.
No, I think it was just the three of them.
All right.
Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. Oh, no, yeah, it was James Corden too. Yes, it was the four of them, including Corden. You're right. But it was very, very funny. Very, very, good, especially for those of us who are space fans too, to sort of see them going through all those very familiar NASA tests and stuff like that. Watching them go through them. One of them was that they put them in the gyroscope, the thing that spins 3 different directions simultaneously. Right. It's all just warping around. They were doing that while making them answer trivia questions. Was very, very, very funny. So I highly recommend you guys look that one up. It's very, very good. The other thing that I had for my watch list is I have just finished a show which I really enjoyed on Netflix called Sex Education. Has nothing to do with this podcast, but it's awesome.
Sex Education, a Russian Doll. What?
I just finished Sex Education. I'm telling you that because that means that now that I've finished that one, we finished that tonight, my wife and I, we are now going to start watching Russian Doll. So Natasha Lyonne's new series just premiered on Netflix at the end of last week. It apparently is sort of I've seen the trailer. It looks like Groundhog's Day. You basically die, you live, you repeat the same day over and over again, but she keeps dying in stupid accidental ways and keeps having to reset herself and then try and find ways not to die in the same stupid way over and over again. It looks really, really good, and I'm a fan of hers, and it's Amy Poehler is the creator of the show, who I'm also a big fan of, so that is what we will be starting as our next program on Netflix.
So what's the sex education thing you're talking about?
Oh, it's again, that just came out, I think it came out on my birthday in January, so it's an 8-episode Netflix series. Gillian Anderson, X-Files, Anderson is sort of the most well-known star on the show. It's about these teenagers in England. They go to this high school. Gillian Anderson plays a sex therapist, and her son has learned a lot about the trade by living with mom. And a couple of friends at school find out that he is knowledgeable about this stuff, even though he is himself a virgin. And so they basically start coming to him for sex advice, and they end up setting it up as this sort of like in-school business where people who are having teenage sexual issues come to him and get their sex education. And it is delightful. It is a really, really, really good series. I thoroughly enjoyed it. My wife and I were enwrapped. It's very hard to get the two of us to sit down and watch a show. We don't binge in the traditional sense. We try and watch something, every other couple nights or whatever we can fit it in. But we actually watched that one in like 8 days, 8 episodes. Wow. Like we were really into it. It was really, really, really entertaining. They've already commissioned a second season. Gillian Anderson is in it playing herself with her own British accent, which is excellent. She plays this divorced sex therapist in this town. She's kind of a love them and leave them woman who basically meets these guys and sleeps with them and then kicks them out and never wants to see them again. And she is charming and funny and really good. The whole young cast that they have in the show is really, really good. And I can't highly recommend that one. Has nothing to do with science fiction beyond Gillian Anderson being in it, but it is excellent. So do yourself a favor and watch that one. Warning, big warning, it is not safe for work. There's lots of language and sexual situations in it, but it is very entertaining if you don't mind that. Yeah, don't watch that one at your desk. Maybe not on the TTC, but it is definitely a really, really, really good show that I recommend highly.
All right, cool. All right. So I'm going to talk about Jaime's pick here. He basically, we talked about Bandersnatch, Black Mirror's Bandersnatch episode, which is a choose your own adventure kind of show. Netflix has a thing called JavaScript Talks, or I don't know if it's JavaScript Talks is like a meetup that Netflix went to. They brought out 3 different engineers and talked about how they actually made this show, how they managed to do the streaming so that, it was seamless streaming, how instead of having a singular linear storyline, you have like these multiple storylines. At one point they show a sort of a flow chart of all the connections between the thing, and it looks like a big amoeba of choices. And apparently there are 5 actual endings for this from Bandersnatch. So and they sort of go through a couple of scenarios about like if you didn't make a choice, they would make a choice for you, kind of thing, after a certain period of time. Because I guess some people sat there and watched the movie without even touching the remote, So, but they had to also figure out how to make it, work on the desktop, how to work on like an iPhone or an Android device or on your television. So the whole sort of interaction model was worked out, and then how they wrote the story script and that kind of stuff. And at one point, in the one scenario where they actually go into the office where the girl is editing the Bandersnatch episode, on the screens is actually the flow charts that they were using in the actual show. So kind of a meta moment at that point there. Anyway, Jaime picked this for Spotcast, but he also picked it as his pick for More Than Just Code. So I don't know. Talk about recycling, eh? Reuse, recycle. There you go.
No. The way to look at it is that he's extremely passionate about it. Oh, he's
right. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Mm-hmm. Okay. My pick is a very simple one. I listen to a show called Age of Persuasion on CBC every Sunday. In fact, I don't listen to it on Sundays anymore. I now download it as a podcast. I listen to it whenever it comes out. Lately, they've been running 2 episodes side by side. So he's got this thing called a digital archive, and he's been replaying episodes from the first 2 seasons, which you can download for free. Blah 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 blah. But this week's new episode, was called "Coming Soon: The Art of the Trailer," which I thought was totally apropos for this show, because we're always talking about movie trailers and stuff stuff like that. And so he talks about in this episode about how like the original Spider-Man movie with Tobey Maguire had a bank robbing scene at the very beginning, and the bank robbers jump in a helicopter and they escape the whole thing, and they end up getting caught in a web which is hung between the two twin towers of the World Trade Center. Of course, the only time you ever saw that was during I think it was before another movie, but they, of course, by the time they had to remove that whole scene from the movie because, of course, the Twin Towers got destroyed at 9/11. But talks about other things, like he talked about the Phantom Menace trailer, which came out in the middle of, I believe it was a Denzel Washington movie. 8,000 people, went to the theater just to watch the Phantom Menace trailer, and then a large majority of, which is good for Denzel Washington, but a large majority of people left the theater, which is not so good for Denzel Washington. I remember that. At that point in time, I remember going to a movie to see, and they said you can't get a refund if you're just here to see the Phantom Menace trailer. They wouldn't give you a refund. You had to sit through the whole movie. So,
wasn't it Meet Joe Black? I thought for some reason that's the one that popped into my mind.
Yeah,
wasn't it Meet Joe Black?
It was the one with Freddie Prinze's son. What's his name?
Freddie Prinze Jr.
Freddie Prinze Jr. Yeah, he was in a sci-fi movie with the guy who played Shaggy, and it was like a bunch of young actors, and it was horrible. It was a remake of a video game or a comic book or something like that. It was not a great movie. It was enjoyable as a sci-fi, but yeah, I'm sure I can look it up. I'll put it in the show notes if I find it. But yeah, it's not good. But anyway, so it's interesting that what Terry O'Reilly does, and he's not the hockey player; he's the marketing guy. He puts together these different shows. He's a marketing guy, a marketing guru, and he talks about how different marketing things work. And there's episodes on Super Bowl commercials, and there was one on this week's episode was about products being mentioned in commercials. Like, for instance, on the BBC, you can't advertise another product in a song. So, like the song "Lola" by the Kinks actually talked about just tastes like cherry cola or Coca-Cola, and they wouldn't let them say Coca-Cola, so they had to re-record a version with cherry cola instead of Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Wait, this particular one, the art of the trailer, I highly recommend it. I've got a link in the show notes for it. Since we talk about trailers all the time, some of the more iconic trailers that have happened over the years. In fact, he even talks about like the beginning, the first bunch of trailers before they were even out there, right? So, like, interesting, like in there's one Hitchcock trailer he talks about with Jimmy Stewart movie. I forget I don't know what the movie is, but the whole trailer is about something that only happens in the trailer, doesn't actually happen in the movie. And at the end of the trailer, Jimmy Stewart talks about how this particular thing that just happened between these two couples, it leads into this movie, right? So yeah, sort of weird ways that they've done trailers over the years, right? So like the Spider-Man one, where the thing you don't even see it in the movie, right? So yeah. Although
they did, I think they went and did a reshoot on that one, because there is a very famous scene where they're like, very much like, New Yorkers stick together, and we're all in this together, and we'll fight you, bad Green Goblin guy, and it's clearly referencing that scene,
for sure.
Where they're like, it's post 9/11, and they're there's a lot of New Yorkers bonding together kind of moment in there too.
Yeah, rah. Yep. All right. Well, I guess that's it for another week. So hey, Jonathan, if people want to get in touch with you, how would they do that?
You can reach me on Twitter and Instagram as @JPK News.
All right. My name is Tim Mitra, TIMMITRA, and that's the way you'll find me on Twitter, with that handle. And until next week, we'll see you in the future.
Bye.
If you want to find out more about the podcast or see the episode show notes, visit the Spockcast website at spockcast.com. You can get in touch with us on the website or follow us on Twitter at Spockcast. If you have feedback or questions, send us a tweet with the hashtag AskSpockcast. If you like the show, please consider recommending us to a friend, writing a review on iTunes, or pledging any amount at patreon.com/Spockcast. You can find details on how to help us out on our website at spockcast.com/sponsor us. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the future.
All right. Well, I got to go watch some TV because Thursday is my busy TV night. So
yeah, what else is on?
Well, The Big Bang Theory,
yeah, I do. I have Big Bang,
Sheldon,
and
Orville's on tonight, isn't it?
No Orville tonight. It's a rerun.
Normally it is. And what do I call it? Carnival? What is his? Or anyway, it's yeah. I don't know the name of the actor, but it's filmed in Canada now. I don't know if he's Canadian or not, but it's called Cardinal.
Oh, Cardinal, yeah.
So the cop show.
I've heard of it, but never watched it.
It's 3 seasons in, and it's.
Oh yeah, I was gonna tell you, I finished Lost in Space. That was the other thing. That was my update from last week. Yeah, I finished. It was good. It was good. It was not
out of this world grade.
No, it was not. I think the best show I saw last year, but it was certainly enough to keep me wanting to watch to the end, and enough that I'm like, oh, that was again, it ended in kind of the way I expected it to. That original sort of homage to the original cast all being together and actually being lost just themselves, like that I kind of saw coming, but there's some good twists along the way, and again, well done. I mean, I would watch Molly Parker read the phone book. She is I am madly in love with / really love the acting of Molly Parker. I am a huge fan, so I honestly didn't even realize she was on the show until I watched. She is, yeah, and I wasn't until I watched the first episode where I realized she was in it. I was like, oh, okay, now I'm in, because she is just so talented and so beautiful. Again, I would watch her do anything. I was and am a huge Deadwood fan, and she was, of course, one of the stars of that. And so, I'm a big Molly Parker fan, and I would enjoyed her performance very much. And even the children actors. Again, some children actors can be cloying and whiny and annoying, but I actually thought all of them did a nice job. Like it wasn't too bad. I will definitely pick up and watch season 2 now. I'm in.
All right, cool. All right. Anyway, I got to turn into a pumpkin.
Attaboy.
All right. Talk to you later.
Always a pleasure.